right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here with the training, learning, and development community. We have a community discussion for this morning called Beyond the Badge DevLearn 2023 wrap up. That was it was quite an event, and right now my primary guest is Rebecca, who's spoken with TLDC in the past at one of our events, and I'm glad to have you here. And I know that there are other folks that will be popping in, and so as I see them come in, I'll go ahead and just invite them on stage. So Kim, thanks so much for being here, and yeah, so I have a series of questions now. Oh, first thing I need to do is ask you. My whole setup has changed because my poor old 2015 iMac didn't make it through last week, so I'm actually on a new MacBook, and everything is a little different. Can you hear me okay? Everything looks all right? Okay, good.
Yep.
Hopefully this weekend I'll have my setup will be all clear and ready to go. But okay, Rebecca, first of all, let's introduce you to everybody. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Rebecca Prejean. I currently run my own business as a freelance instructional designer, learning strategist, and most recently speaker. I did get to speak at DevLearn, but I've been in learning and development and instructional design for going on, I did the count the other day, around 12 years.
Wow.
At this point, but I love it. And I live in Austin, Texas, and I actually focus on neurodivergent learners in
Nice.
terms of accessibility, creating those kinds of experiences, and consulting with different companies and things that want to make that good shift, right, in terms
Yeah.
of culture and atmosphere. So super excited to be here. Love working with y'all.
Thanks, Rebecca. I appreciate your time. So let's start off with overall impressions of the event. What did you think of the conference? How would you describe the atmosphere and organization of the event? And interestingly, especially since your focus is on neurodivergent folks, even just having an event in Las Vegas, that,
Yeah.
there's something to be said about that. So
Oh,
overall
yes.
impressions.
Overall impressions for me were positive.
Mhm.
I'm actually much more of an introvert, believe it or not. And so conferences like that can be very intimidating. They can be very overwhelming, just to my nervous system. But I felt like everybody was very welcoming. I got a chance to actually chat briefly with Mark Britz. Super nice, super welcoming, super encouraging. And then the days of the conference, what I found to be most interesting was how engaged people were.
Mhm.
They wanted to learn. They wanted to network. They wanted to meet everybody. They wanted to see what technology is out there. And it really kind of brings home the fact that this is a community. We all work so separately from one another that sometimes it doesn't feel that way. But it really is a community full of people who want to help others learn and be their best selves. During my sessions in particular, I found it to be really electrifying and really inspirational. Like people were really engaged. They really had questions. They really wanted to learn more. And in the ones that I attended, same thing. People really wanted to learn more. There were folks staying after the different sessions to ask questions. So for me, it was a really well organized event, nothing crazy, easy to figure out where things were, lots of maps, lots of easy stuff. And like I said, it really, really just brought home what I do and kind of my role in what we all do, right, in this community and in this learning and development industry.
It is helpful that, at the particular hotel, at the Mirage, once you get down that hallway and you're headed in that direction, that's where everything is.
Yes.
So, yeah, because I know that Vegas and even other places, it can be a little confusing sometimes where things are. But that one, you make it down that one hallway and you're pretty much on your way.
I will say that was helpful. By the time I booked, there wasn't any space at the Mirage. So I actually ended up staying at the Venetian across the street.
I did
And
too.
I can absolutely attest to what you said. It was so confusing. And I got lost all the time in the Venetian. I'm like, I don't know where I'm at.
I was going to
But
mention that. I had to take 2 elevator banks to get to my room, and same for you.
yes, and you're just like, I don't know where I'm at. I just passed like a Skechers shop and some salespeople. I don't know where I'm supposed to stay.
It's true. It's true. And then I actually asked housekeeping if there were any shortcuts, and they told me of a shortcut. Like they said, take the elevator to the 10th floor, cross the bridge, then come down, and you'll be. And I tried to do that and totally got lost. I ended up all over the place. But yeah, so I think at the Mirage, it really was helpful. And there are places like if you want coffee or a snack or anything, if you need to buy something, there were little places that you can go to. But I know that the guild also provides those snacks and stuff for during for breakfast and during breaks and stuff. There are things out there for people to get and to eat. So that's very, very good. And so overall atmosphere of everything, you feel people were just engaged.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Like really engaged. People really wanted to be there and make the most out of their time.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just, a bunch of old L&D people that have been around for forever. It's brand new designers, brand new L&D folks. So you get some really good, fresh ideas. It was great, to be honest.
Rebecca, that's actually a very that's very apropos that statement because I've been around that event for years and years since the beginning, and some of the old timers that I know were just like, yeah, I don't really know anybody anymore. It's like a whole different group of people and all that. But I think that that's really refreshing and that's good,
Yeah.
and that's important too. That shows that it's a quality event. So, what was your session?
My session, I had two actually. One was like a morning buzz about supporting neurodiversity diversity in the workplace. And the second one was about neurodivergent learners and just different strategies that we can essentially employ in our development process for
Nice.
e-learning and micro learnings and things like that. Because as somebody who's neurotypical, my perception of what I create, it might be great, but that might not be somebody else's reality. And
Yeah.
so it's just kind of building that bridge between making our perception their reality, because that's really what it's about. It's about reaching everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I got to
No,
speak
that's
on
great.
those. I felt honored to do it because
Nice.
it's
Very
important.
cool. So you submitted a proposal and
Yes.
you got in. Okay.
Submitted a proposal, and full disclosure, I remember originally just wanting to go to
Hmm.
DevLearn, and then I saw the price,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, "That is outside of my budget, 100%." So, I was like, "Well, let me go ahead and submit a proposal to speak," and I really started thinking about what I do, what I would want people to know, and just what I can share from my experiences. Um, and that really spoke to me. It's
That's
something
great.
that really needs to be pushed a lot
Hmm.
in workplaces and just in learning cultures in general. And I'm like, I've got something to say. It's not to me, right? It might not be like huge pinnacle thing to talk about or to
Hmm.
say. It's not like prolific, but it's something that people should hear
Right.
and want to go, and I can't afford it. So I'm going to at least submit a proposal. Worst case scenario, I just have to work really hard to save the money to go, but this is an avenue. And it also, for anybody who's thinking about that, like I might not be able to afford to go, we all have different experiences. And there is somebody who can learn from what you've been through
Hmm.
and what you've dealt with. And so creating a session, it definitely takes time to think about your proposal and to write it and all of those things. But I would say don't be afraid to submit it. The worst they
Right.
can do is say no.
Hmm.
And if they say yes, then you get to pass on that knowledge that you learned over time. So to me, it was a win-win.
And just the fact that you made the effort to try and especially the fact that Mark Britz accepted that proposal, that I think that says a lot about the program itself. I did talk to him for a little bit, and he was pretty proud of the program overall. So yeah, kudos for you for submitting, and I'm so glad that you were able to get in. It is expensive though, right?
Yeah.
I think I can't remember, what is it still like. What, actually, I do have the website in front of me. Is it like still like one is it 16.95 as a standard rate, or is it more
I
than that
wanted
now?
to say it was either that or a little higher. Like it was pretty steep cost.
Yeah.
Um, Now, as I said, is it worth the cost? Yes. Like you can justify the cost,
Yeah.
but in terms of just regular living, not all of us have that.
Right. No, it's
I mean,
true.
we're real people.
Right.
So, we don't all have that. I know I didn't have it. So I was like, I'm gonna try this way. But if you can swing it, if you can afford it, if you're trying to get your employer to maybe sponsor it and build a business case for it, there's a lot to be said, especially when we're talking about like AI and
Yeah,
virtual reality and these immersive experiences and trying to reach all these different learners that we all come in contact with. There's a business case to be made.
that's great. And I don't want to forget, before we went live, you had talked about um you had mentioned that you thought there might be some folks that feel a little intimidated about going to DevLearn. Can you like speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. And it came to me because one of my clients, I was talking to them about DevLearn. I'm really pumping it up. I'm like, you absolutely need to send your people to this so they can go learn. And what I thought was an amazing opportunity, person said, yeah, I'll send them. I talked to one of their trainers later, and they're like, it just feels like a lot
Yeah.
for what we do and where we're currently at. Like it feels so advanced for what we do here in this nonprofit organization. And I hadn't really thought of it in that way. And I talked to her later and she's like, it's just really intimidating because it's such a big thing. And they have like all these sessions, like 150 plus sessions. And it's like 3 days and workshops and all this stuff. And so it can feel intimidating. Like, why would I need to go to something this big if I'm just part of a nonprofit organization or maybe even part of a smaller business
Hmm.
where it's just local? Why would I need to go to this? And I had never thought of that, to be honest with you. I was like, this is a no-brainer. It's great. But it can be intimidating.
Hmm.
And it's okay to feel that. It, for me, requires, and when I talked to the trainer, I said this, it means being a little bit more introspective about why you're doing what you're doing and where you want to go with what you're doing. Like you can continue to do these things, but you might be leaving out learners. You might be leaving out strategies that can really reach your learners that you may not be aware of, because that's the purpose of these conferences, is for us to not necessarily learn things that we already know, it's to build upon the skills that we have and to find new skills and new ways to teach and train and educate and really make this world of learning and development irreplaceable. Because right now, a lot of companies think that, well, I can do without an L&D team.
Right.
That these conferences help us to make the business case that no, you can't do without us. And this is why, because we can do all these things and reach your learners and propel your businesses, propel your organizations to where you want to go.
Right.
And so that's the explanation I gave her, and she felt better about it. But but she still was like, that's still so big. And I just explained there are foundational courses, right?
Right.
Like I taught one that I felt was very 101. What is neurodivergency? What is being neurotypical? What are these terms, right? Very introductory, but there's value in that. So
Hmm.
even if you are at like the start of an L&D journey, you can find yourself so much further along than I think even some of us were. Some of us that have been around for like a decade than where we were, like a year,
Hmm.
2 years into our careers. Like it can only help, essentially.
Nice. How about so your experience there, the quality and relevance of the sessions overall?
Ooh.
Just were you feeling like the selection was good? And would you agree with Mark where he felt like he built a really good program?
I think he did book a good program. A lot of talk about AI, because I mean, that is the big thing right now,
Hmm.
right? AI, how to use it, how to use data, how to really use it to our advantage. The only thing
Any takeaways that are stuck with you right now on the AI
I
side?
the AI is here to stay.
Yeah.
And it's not going anywhere. But for me, a couple of key takeaways were learning how to use AI while still building in your own creativity. Because honestly, that is a part that I kind of fear a little bit, is that we become so reliant on AI doing all these things for us
Hmm.
that we lose some of that human touch. And
Hmm.
so making sure that we're using AI as a tool
Mhm.
that can support our gifts, essentially, is one of the many takeaways that I took from a couple of the sessions I went to. I would have loved to have seen a few more things on accessibility, um, and just some of that type of stuff. But
Great.
overall, I felt like the number of sessions, the relevance of the sessions, they really were key for where we are today, in just the L&D space. It's all
Nice.
about tech right now.
No, that's great. That's good to hear. Have you been to any other major events? Like, say, can you compare it to anything at all?
I did go to another Learning Guild event last year. It
Okay.
was Learning 2022. Yes.
Okay.
I'm like, we're in 2023. So, yes, it's
Yeah.
2022. And compared to that, I felt like the Guild, honestly, they put on a great conference. They always
Mhm.
do. And
Mhm.
that's from a brand perspective, they put on great conferences. I
Mhm.
will say this one to me, much more tech driven,
Mhm.
um, much more talking about technology and AI and virtual reality and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the content was definitely, I would say, different in
Yeah.
that regard.
Yeah.
Like they still have talks about tech, but this one feels super heavy on
Yeah.
technology with like Demo Fest and things like that that you can try.
Mhm. Mhm. So speaking of Demo Fest, how about the networking opportunities?
Networking, amazing. And the really cool thing is that you end up meeting people and you don't really know who they are until they come up to you and talk to you, and you're like, "You're from where?" "You're from Penn State."
Yeah.
"They have this here? Y'all are here?" Like, you meet some amazing people, at this conference, and you really make some great connections. I've made some wonderful connections, not in terms of, like gigs and things, but really good conversations and connections that I can lean on a little bit, and if I have questions in a particular space, but also that can lean on me a little bit, and so it gives you kind of a knowledge partner, to some extent. And with so many of us being remote, it's helpful. And I was shocked by the people and the fact that you meet CEOs at this thing, and
Mhm.
they don't fit your mold of what a CEO is. They're just in jeans, a shirt, just walking around like everybody else. So it really does kind of level out that field. Like you don't get that weird kind of haughty feeling that you would get at some conferences and some events in different places.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's good to hear. Oh yeah, Kim is saying I always wanted to go to DevLearn, but I don't dev, and that's what makes me say that. Yeah, I mean that's kind of sort of to Rebecca's point. That's I think that that brand can make it feel a little limiting in that way, but it wasn't, so I was there when DevLearn was first created, and it was supposed to be a lot more techy. It was by design supposed to be the one event that was going to have more innovative approaches highlighted and things. And then the other event, the Learning Solutions Conference, which takes place in Orlando or in Florida, that one was supposed to be more sort of general for instructional designers. Dev was supposed to be the geeky one,
Yeah.
and so it does still kind of feel like that, but it really isn't because
No.
there's something for everyone at that particular event, and there kind of has to be because L&D isn't that specific. Really, there's just so much to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think, like you just mentioned, right? It's so multifaceted.
yeah,
Like everything that we do, even if you're not a techie, like quite frankly, my session talked about some tech, but it was really about us changing our mindsets. So there's really some good thought process sessions at DevLearn that
yeah.
people can use and kind of utilize throughout what they do.
Love it. So let's talk about some highlights. Anybody in particular? I heard lots of great things about the keynotes. I'll just throw this in there real quick. I went just an overnight. I didn't pay to go to the. I mean, I just did the free expo pass. but from the Bay Area, so outside of San Francisco, I bought from Southwest. I got a plane ticket, round trip ticket, plus one night at the Venetian for $281.
Ooh,
So it was actually not bad for me out of pocket, and I spent
no.
2 days there, so it wasn't too bad. Anyway, so back to speakers, things like that. What did you think?
Oh, wow. In terms of like how knowledgeable they were, I did not meet a speaker that I was thinking to myself, "You're unprepared. What are you doing?" I'm like, because we've all been to those where we're like, "Ooh, I feel like this was a little bit non-prepared,"
Yeah.
kind of thing. I didn't see any of that. The keynotes themselves, like I only got to see one. It was my first day there,
Okay.
just because for me, I'm like, I need to step out of the crowd for a bit, especially if I'm about to do things like the next day. But all of the information was poignant and I observed a lot. So, yes, I did listen to the keynotes, I did listen to some of the speakers, but I looked a lot at the audience
Mm,
because to me, that's how you can tell, is a session really good? Is are people getting what they should get? Like, is the message resonating?
mhm.
And one thing that stood out to me was again just how electric people were, like the speakers were, and how engaged and interested everybody was. Like, just really odd for adults, but just
Wow.
laser focused on, I want to make sure that I get everything that I need to get um, out of this session and everything I can. So, trying to think.
Yeah, I mean, like, is there just like one person? Was there any particular session that
Like,
that
let me look at the one my list of the ones that I
because
went
I know everyone, what's his name?
to, but
Everybody Loves Phil, I think is what that
yes,
first keynote was, and I
yes,
know.
he was amazing.
Yeah.
But for me, I feel like keynotes, most of them are gonna be amazing. That's why
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
keynotes.
yeah.
Essentially, they're not gonna usually people aren't gonna hire a lackluster keynote.
Right,
So I
right,
feel
no.
like keynotes are the way to go.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at my list because I love them all,
Uh-huh.
to be quite frankly
I
honest
am
with you.
curious though, as an introvert, as somebody, because you have to take breaks, right?
Yes.
So how many sessions did you go to? Or, I mean, can you share
For
that?
me, I went to a total of 4,
Okay.
and that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when you
Yeah.
consider all of them are about 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And then you wanna go into the expo and you wanna kinda walk around and you wanna kind of meet some folks, right? It just becomes a lot for
Yes.
somebody who's introverted. But I will say that even with the breaks, I felt like I got so much that I don't
Mhm.
think I could have gotten any more because there
Yeah.
is that sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Of I wanna go to all the things, but I'm not gonna be able to absorb all the things.
Yeah.
Um, I will say, and this is one of the ones, Betty Danowitz, and I
Okay.
think she's in this group. Like, I did go to her session, and what I liked about her in particular was her taking on immersive learning. For me, that is a place that I won't say I'm scared to see what that comes to, but I will say I feel like she made it accessible and she made
Okay.
it really simple, um, for even like the layperson to
Mhm.
understand.
Mhm.
And I've seen her popping up in groups and stuff, and I was really curious, which is part of the reason I went to her session.
Yeah, she's very dynamic.
Like, I've seen your name all over the place, so I kinda wanna see what you gotta say
Uh-huh.
because we're in all of these things, and I see you all the time. And she's a really dynamic speaker
Mhm.
as well,
Mhm.
which for me is important because I can go off a bit in
Yeah.
terms of thought when in a session. I did not with her. But part of what I loved about her so much is that she made it really easy to understand immersive learning
Yeah.
and took it out of this space of being, in my mind and a lot of people's minds, this weird, inaccessible, kind of abstract concept and brought it down to earth.
Good.
So if she's in here, thank you so much. Um, because it was a great session. But to me, she's one that stands out in particular. Like I
That's
said, the keynote was fantastic, but I expected him to be fantastic because he's a
mhm,
keynote.
mhm.
For just regular sessions, she was fantastic because she is dynamic and she is able to really break down a concept
Mhm.
in a way that is digestible and
That's
is
great.
easy to understand, which is something important for everybody. And that makes a great session to me.
Excellent. That's good to know. I do wanna ask you, do you think that part of maybe just sort of your need requiring or needing to take breaks, do you think it could have just been Vegas in general?
Could have been. My sister actually came with me
Okay.
as like a support
Mhm.
person, and she wanted to see what her sister does. And so we did go out, like, and just kind of walked a little bit to a couple of things. And that was such an overwhelming experience. And and we noticed that as the sun started to go down, weird things started to happen, and the atmosphere just changed
Yeah,
from day to night.
yeah.
And so it was a bit draining. There are a lot of people.
Mhm.
It is very crowded. If you are somebody who's introverted, it can be overwhelming just in
Yeah,
terms of the atmosphere, the people coming up to you, people trying to sell you things.
yeah.
Even if you're just looking at shops, there are people trying to sell you stuff. Um, and some of them can be a little aggressive salespeople, but they've got a job to do. So I
Mhm.
understand it. But for me, taking the breaks absolutely probably could have been Vegas as well because
Yeah.
it's a different speed from Texas. I mean, we're not doing that here.
Right, no, it's true, and I do think because I consider myself an introvert, and I do have to take breaks, and
Yeah.
it was difficult just with the Venetian being across the street and having to go through that whole thing, and then, of course, finding your room. The room was great, I love the room, and it was nice to be there, and I did try to relax as much as possible to sort of just recover, but, just talking all day. I ended up like losing my voice that weekend, the following weekend, because I had just worked it
Oh,
so
yeah.
hard those few days. But yeah, it was very, very it was definitely difficult. And also the smoke got to me too. Like I just felt
Oh,
that immediately in my throat. And I'm like, oh, ouch.
like, oh, yes, and you really can't avoid it
Right.
because they're right there, like,
Hmm.
as soon as you walk into a hotel or a
Yeah.
resort, casino, however you wanna word it,
Yeah.
and I wasn't prepared for that. So,
Yeah.
this was my first time being in Vegas ever, and so
Wow.
I knew that they had casinos, but in my mind, I was like, "Well, the casino is completely separate from the hotel, right?"
Uh-huh.
No, you're walking through the casino to get to your elevator to hopefully get to another elevator to get
Yes.
to your room.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, just we got a few more minutes here left, and I wanted to ask you, could you tell everybody? Okay, let's start with this one. What do you think of the expo?
The expo, I actually thought that for those that are maybe weighing whether or not to go, that would be your part of your use case.
Right, right.
The sessions themselves are great. Like I said, huge amounts to learn, but the networking and the things that you see and the software and the programs that you're introduced to at the expo are almost invaluable
Hmm.
because you not only meet vendors like Beyond that so many of us are aware of, right? Articulate. Like those are household names for most L&D people. But you meet a lot of smaller companies that maybe has like an LMS or have like some services that they can offer as a vendor. So that's where a lot of that networking comes in my mind, is just going to the expo, meeting some different people. Like I said, I didn't stay too long because that is a huge room, huge space, lots of people, lots of movement. Um, so
Everybody's trying to get your attention.
everybody's trying to get your attention. Everybody has a goal. But the one thing I will say is that at an expo, I usually expect a lot of sales type stuff. And yes, there is sales stuff here. Clearly, it's an expo. But I never felt like people were being super crazy aggressive or really disrespectful or just really trying to get your business and not actually help you
Hmm.
um, in a way that's valuable. Like they really did kind of take some time, the ones I talked to anyway,
Yeah.
um, they took the time to kind of ask what you do, who you are, what are your goals, what are your objectives. And some of that just didn't line up with where I'm currently at in my career space, um, for various reasons, right? Cost and all these things. But for me, I felt like the expo was really, really helpful in terms of also helping you see that even though, we may have this big company that we're all aware of, don't sleep on the smaller guys
Yeah. Yeah.
because they have a lot to offer as well. It's just their names aren't out there, right? Like they're not posting all over LinkedIn sometimes. They might not have the advertising budget, advertising know-how, but it just spoke to me to make sure that I do my research a bit more before I pick like a vendor or something like that, or I pick like a software program. So for me, that was what came from the expo part of it.
Nice.
Great
And
networking, also just enlightenment.
so you mentioned Beyond. Is there any other exhibitors that may have stood out to you at all that you recall?
Not really,
Not
because I
really.
was mesmerized by Beyond, to be honest with you. They
Yeah.
had a fabulous expo
Hmm.
that was there. So it took a lot of attention and a lot of time. And I talked to like quite a few in that short time I was there.
Right.
Um, but no, like none in particular that stood out to me. But that's for me and my needs. Um, I think other people probably would have thought differently because there's a lot there, but I'm just in a very specific space
Yeah.
for what I'm looking for.
Yeah. I think I personally, like, I've been to that expo so many times. This was probably the most impressive that I've ever seen it. It was huge. Like some of those booths were incredible. I've never
Yeah,
seen it like that before. And even like ELB, the E-Learning Brothers had like their booth was just lit Legos, and just the height of some of them were just so tall, and it was pretty incredible. I did not realize that L&D would ever have an expo of that size and being impressive like that. So it was pretty amazing,
it really brings home how many vendors and
right?
services there are and how many you don't even realize are in existence. Like,
Hmm.
it's massive. And in my head, I'm like, "Oh, they do this every year? That's a lot."
Yeah.
But it was massive.
It
So,
is. And it's not cheap. It's very yeah, going over there and getting yourself in front of folks is not cheap. The one interesting thing that I heard from multiple folks is that they were surprised that Adobe wasn't there, but Adobe does do their own event just
yeah.
a few weeks prior to DevLearn. Um, so yeah, it was sort of interesting. Um, so last question for me, best thing about DevLearn, one of my favorite things is Demo Fest. What do you think of Demo Fest?
Demo Fest to me, I view it as a gateway into seeing what you can really do if you know your tools and if you sit and study, is what I would say.
Mhm.
Because I feel like Demo Fest is almost like a class, but not a class.
Okay.
Like, because you're looking at these things that people have created. You're looking at these different demonstrations, and in a way, you're learning, I could do that, or I
Yeah.
could do a version of that.
Okay.
Or maybe I can't do that right now, but if I
Mhm.
learn X, Y, and Z tools, I can do that and it can help my learners in this way.
Mhm.
So I viewed it as almost like a class. For me, there was one in particular portion of Demo Fest because I have a client that's LGBT centric. And so there was an actual demo of like some programs and stuff that they created. And I really took from that some elements of simplicity because I'm not a simple designer. I like the fancy, but some elements of simplicity and just also how to organize and strategize
Mhm.
some different things. So Demo Fest to me, again, even if all the other things haven't sold, DevLearn, Demo Fest is another place where people can be like, yeah, like that's a learning experience all in itself. Again, a lot of movement, a lot of stuff going on, but a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And as somebody who's been around for a while, sometimes we forget that we don't know everything.
Right.
And there are definitely people who are better than me. and I saw them at Demo Fest so, and some of these different places. And so it really does help to see some additional perspectives on things that can get built. And for me, all in all, what DevLearn did for me was it helped to awaken some creative
Hmm.
things that have probably been dormant, and also kind of helped me to realign with some goals that I want to do
Yeah.
and figure out where I want to go next
Hmm.
on my journey, especially when we're talking about like tech, like AI and, virtual reality and stuff. So Demo Fest was a huge part of that for me, figuring out, I want to know how to do that. I'm going to figure out how to do that. I'm
Yeah.
going to go to class
Well,
and figure out that.
it sounds like that alone was a great takeaway. Just
Yeah.
being able to go to that. I think it was only 2 hours that you get in there.
Yeah. So not super, super lengthy, but even if you stay 15, 20 minutes, it can get you to thinking about the things that are really possible with L&D tools and things that we encounter every day that
Yeah.
sometimes we just didn't think of because we're all so different.
Right. No, totally. All right. Last question. Based on your experience, would you recommend DevLearn to others in our field, and why? You pretty much answered this already, but
Yes.
just sort of okay.
Highly recommend it. And like I said, it's one of those situations where if you have to go to one conference a year, because I do believe that you should probably go to one a year just to kind of get out there, see what's out there, this is a good one to go to
Okay.
because it gives you so many different avenues to participate and to be involved in, right? You have Demo Fest, but you have the expo, but you have the sessions, but you also have workshops,
Mhm.
before the conference that you can take advantage of. So there's just a lot of different options, but it really does help you see what's possible, see what else is out there, see other people's thought processes, their opinions, their thoughts. And to me, that can only be helpful for what we do
Yeah.
because what we do isn't done in a vacuum. It's not done in a silo. Like part of learning and development and the beauty in it is that we're all good at different things and we all have different ideas and we're all using those things for the same goal to help people and to help learners and to reach learners. And this is that kind of conference. We're going to meet all the people, you're going to see all the things. And once you are done, I will be surprised if you don't have a whole goal sheet of things that you want to do. No lie, like what last week, um, actually last week I went and found something at NYU, like online, for like a professional certificate in XR design. So that was literally something that came out of DevLearn. Had not
Wow.
thought about it. Had thought kind of want to maybe take a small course, but I'm like, no. Like I really want to learn how to design these things and how to make these things the way that they should be and in the best way that I can. So it's really a great, great, great conference to get your mind going and to rejuvenate you.
That is great to hear. Okay. So, but I do want to point out you got in because you're a speaker. And
Yes.
so, yeah, and it is like earlier we were talking about how it can be financially, whether or
Draining.
not you get the ROI on going to the conference really depends upon, sort of how you're getting in to begin with. But yeah, if it is something that might be a little tough to afford, yeah, think about that submitting as a speaker. And I did, I talked to Russell Sweep, and Russell did get in with a press pass. So he went in kind of as a blogger and somebody who was kind of covering the event.
That's
So I
cool.
guess that's a possibility there. And then of course, just like my own personal experience, I went and just did the expo. Um, it was still a really, really valuable experience for me. I think that the network part of it is important because I get to see a lot of good, good friends, people I haven't seen in years. I was able to reconnect with again, and that's always nice. And then, and of course, networking with some of the community. I did go out to dinner with a few folks, and that was really wonderful too. So that was important. All right, and let me just check. We got a let's see. Julia's saying, glad I got to hear this. Great advice. If I prepare for the experience, save the money, suss out which sessions I see, I can make the best of this potentially overwhelming conference. Yeah. No, absolutely. Rebecca, thank you so much
Mm.
for sharing your perspective on the event. I was really glad that you were here and a guest. So this was basically a Rebecca show today, and thanks everybody for showing up in the chat and listening. I do have another event that is in the works right now. I can never remember. I haven't put the name of it to memory, but it's the talent development conference that I'm trying to put together. That one's going to be the next one. So if you can, go to tldchat.us. Check out some of the posts that I've made about that. I definitely can use some help in building that one out. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the session. Thanks again, Rebecca. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye, guys.